Hey, Cindy, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't we start off? Just tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
Absolutely. I'm Dr. Cindy, the expert's ghostwriter, and I help entrepreneurs write books that make money and an impact. So, over the past 3 years, I've helped more than 100 authors think about their goals and how they're going to achieve them, and then put those plans into action. They've done such things as hitting the Amazon bestseller list and even getting TEDx talks and winning book awards. So it's been a fantastic journey.
That's amazing. How did you get into this?
Well, I have a PhD in English, and I would have been an academic, but I fell in love with an oil and gas man and wound up in Malaysia and Indonesia for 7 years.
Cool.
Yeah, I came back to America with a 7 year work gap, and that was really the best thing that could have possibly happened to me because that propelled me into the entrepreneur space. So, especially right now with everything happening with COVID-19 and the lockdowns, and a lot of my friends I went to college with are very nervous about what's going to happen with their academic careers. But, I'm over here in the online entrepreneur space going, there's plenty of room and tons of people want to learn from me. So it's really been interesting to watch.
Yeah. So, talk to us. How do you start the process of writing a book?
Yes, everything starts with the Get My Book Started, which is a starter package that I do as a standalone service. So we figure out exactly who the target audience is for the book and what your goals are as an author, which is really about how you will define success. And a lot of times people overlook that part and they just think, what do they want to talk about? And then what they wind up with is a book that maybe they don't even know who wants to read it, or it's a book about something unrelated to their business goals, so then it's hard to make it all fit together into one personal brand. And then with all that determined, we do a brainstorm of the table of contents, and we look for the pain point that we've identified in the audience that is making them look for your book right now. We start there, and then we bookend it by the end. What do we want them to do at the end of the book? So what goalpost do we get them to that's going to make them want to continue learning from you and being on this journey, such that they will accept the free offer that you have with your book, so that they will join your list and continue following you? Because Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, they tell you your book's sold, they give you a royalty check, but they don't tell you who bought it. So if you want your readers to follow you, that's, the opt-in is everything. So really the book is all about getting them to the opt-in to continue following you.
Okay, that's brilliant because I think a lot of people are there just like, I'm just going to write a book and put it out there, and they're not thinking about what that next step is going to look like. And so, what are some examples of like, how would you stay in contact with somebody? What would you put in there at the end of the book?
Absolutely. If you have, I've got a client right now who has a book that is looking at 7 different personality types for communication. So a perfect opt-in there would be a quiz to find out which of the 7 personality types do you have.
Uh huh.
Um, and then you could even have, she hasn't gotten this far yet, but she could even add in there, a free report about, based on your personality type, how do you mesh with the other 6 personality types, and have that something extraneous to the book that just explains it but doesn't personalize it to you. So that can work very well. Another thing, I mostly do nonfiction, but if you're in the fiction space, a great way to get your audience to keep reading your next book and staying on your list there would be, the first chapter of the next book, which would be ideal if it's like a fantasy series. Here's a taste of the next one, to keep them wanting more.
Got it. I actually just got John Assaraf's latest book, Inner Size, and he did
Mhm.
this exact same thing in there. So in the book, he's teaching you like how to use your mind and everything to reprogram for success. And then the freebie he gave is like actual meditations that he's guiding you through. And by doing that, he actually got me to buy his next program, which is Winning the Game of Money, through his follow-up email sequences. And I'm like, you're brilliant.
I love that. And that's a great point. It doesn't have to be a written freebie. I have another client who had videos embedded, and you could use the I forget what you call it, the little code that you can scan and get it. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can give people other kinds of media and just keep the conversation going, and even be multidisciplinary.
How do you see the book as being part of the overall business strategy?
I see a book as a powerful lead magnet
Hmm.
because it's a very small amount of money. It's usually under $20 if it's a paperback. And but they are making an investment. So that's where there would be a huge advantage of actually having a physical book as opposed to a free ebook, which people download and forget about. But if they paid money for it, they're less likely to forget about it. And then there are so many different ways that you can plan your book as a tool for your business to work in different ways. So if you think about somebody like Donald Miller, the Building a Story Brand book, he gives you the whole
Brilliant.
kitchen sink. It is so brilliant.
Yep.
But it is such a big kitchen sink. Who can just read that book and then implement all of it and not need any more from him?
Yeah.
Like, you read the book and you're like, but tell me how. And so it's amazing because even though he gives you everything, you still want more and you want help doing it. So in that way, that book that just gives you the whole thing is a very powerful lead magnet for his courses, and then the big retreats he does, and even becoming a story brand coach yourself. And then in contrast to that, you can also give just a little bit. So when you think about Rachel Hollis, Girls Stop Apologizing, like, it's a lot of story and just a little tips. But those little tips are enough because she has a very different kind of audience, and they don't want to get from here to here. They don't even believe that's possible. They just want to get from here to there. So that's how far she takes them. But then they want to get further and further and further. So that still is enough for them to say, I want to know more. I want to take more of that journey. So it's all really dependent on your audience and what they're looking for, and then what the rest of your funnel looks like for how you want to continue serving them once they're in.
Got it. Cool. Okay. Where do you find people usually get the most stuck when they're writing their book?
Yes, they get the most stuck. Usually, I've met people who've spent years on their book, and I'm like, wow, tell me what's your word count? How far along are you? And they're still on chapter 1
Oh no.
or the introduction. And what I've found is that is the worst place to start your book, because if you're trying to do the introduction, or a lot of times when people start chapter 1, that would intend to be the introduction. And what I mean is you're trying to tell people what the whole book's going to be about. But how do you know that if you haven't written it yet? So what I find that makes the most sense is we write the introduction last. I mean last, not even till we're in the line edit, copy edit phase. And instead, we pick somewhere to start, because you have to pick somewhere, but I'm very fluid whether that remains where we're going to start. So if you reframe how you approach writing your book, and instead of thinking the first thing I'm going to write is actually going to be the first thing people read, the first thing you write is going to be what you know your audience cares about, that you can most easily speak to, because that's going to be really easy for you to do. And then you just start there and keep going. And in the editing process, you're going to figure out what needs to be chapter 1 and what ends up being chapter 12, which I thought needed to be chapter 2. You shouldn't know that now. You just need to make a plan and then expect it to evolve as you write.
Okay. What are your thoughts on hiring a ghostwriter?
This is kind of funny. So I've found that I work best with people who've already been trying to write their book and have run into those issues. And the reason is, if they haven't tried at all and they just, abstractly think that it would make sense for their marketing and they ought to, but they don't really have their heart and soul invested in it. And it's not really an interesting project beyond just a piece in the machine. I've found those projects to be very difficult to complete satisfactorily. And ultimately, those clients are less satisfied as well. So who should hire a ghostwriter? You've been trying to write, but you're stuck. You also value the writing process, and you want to have a good quality book at the end of the day that will create a rewarding reader experience for your readers,
Mhm.
because then you're going to care enough about your book. And it's not just about the money you invest with the ghostwriter, but it's the time you invest with the ghostwriter and the feedback that you give them and the access you give them to your other content and your team. And if you don't have that level of investment, then it probably won't be the best fit. So maybe it's not the right time, or maybe that's not the right book idea. And I would give that some more thought before interviewing ghostwriters.
How much would it cost to hire a ghostwriter?
My books start at 25,000, and that is for a 30,000 word book.
Holy schlimosies. That was a lot more than I was expecting. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So you really need to make sure you have the business strategy in place before you would go that route and making sure like this is a good investment.
Absolutely. And I'll add a little color to that. So for ghostwriting, as far as the industry standard goes, it usually starts at, if you find someone who's offering it for less than 16,000, unless they're just starting out and it's a starter project, which when I had starter projects before, I'd had successes that I'd had, you might find somebody that would be, possibly would do an amazing job. They just need an opportunity to show what they can do. But other than that, like 16,000 is really the baseline. And even where my pricing is still kind of in the mid tier.
Mhm.
So I have a friend who's been doing this a lot longer than me, and she actually charges $75,000 for the same length book.
Holy schlimosies. Okay. Wow. I'm like blown away. I had no idea it would be that much. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that that would be a good investment if you have the business strategy in place on the back end. Got it. What are your thoughts on like speaking your book instead of actually writing it? Because I know Dean Graziosi, he said that when he wrote like his New York Times bestsellers, he's dyslexic, so he didn't actually write it. He just like spoke it out loud.
Yes, I would love to speak with Dean's editors and find out what
Yep.
found out what happened behind the scenes. But I recently wrote a social media post and an email about this. So when I first started my business, I used rev.com, and I would write open-ended questions that follow the table of contents, and then I would record those interviews, and from the transcripts start trying to draft. And the issues I ran into were a multitude. So the clients would get their draft back and say, "This just sounds like me talking." And it's like, well, there's a reason for that. So,
Yeah.
ouch. But also, like, what can I do to make that better? And then also, when we're speaking, a lot of times we'll stop mid sentence. But in a transcript, you're trying to finish the sentence. Whereas if you're actually listening to someone, you realize that idea went nowhere. We moved on.
Mhm.
Delete. Okay. And a lot of times we're also very repetitive. So you may say the same thing 3 times as you're clarifying it to yourself. So what I do now, and I have for the past 2.5 years, and it's worked way better, is I take notes while I'm interviewing, and it's still recorded. But when I take notes, I'm listening for the good stuff. So I just take that down. And then I'll also make timestamp notes. So if you were talking so fast, it was brilliant, but I just didn't get it, I can make a timestamp note. And then I can only send, that 5 or 10 minute chunk to Rev to transcribe for me if it's just too difficult to listen on the recording, because you really are talking really fast and like it's really good, but I just can't. So I've found that to be much more successful. But what I will say about self-recording is that's a great way to brainstorm.
Mhm.
And sometimes, if you look at it that way, then I would think of looking at the transcript as, okay, so where are my gems? And I would be willing to bet that's what the editing team that took Dean's transcripts and then made it those awesome books, probably what was happening there. The only person I'm aware of, writing or speaking, who everything that comes out of their mouth is almost perfect would be Stephen King, who writes
Mhm.
2,000 words a day and has his books very little edited between what he writes and what we read.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. That's
So,
not me.
Yeah, right? Yeah, me either. So, where do you see people get stuck promoting the book? Like they've put in all the work to get it written, and then how do you make sure you're not like putting it out to crickets?
Yes. So, one thing that can happen is you wrote your book in a room by yourself and you didn't tell anyone it was happening. And then when you launch it, there's no audience to launch it to.
Mm.
And so if you don't already have an audience that already wants to hear from you on the topic of your book, then certainly while you're writing your book is the time to build that audience of people who want to hear from you on this topic. And when you're self-publishing, you can't plagiarize your own self. So feel free to liberally put little snippets directly from your book in your social media captions or in your blogs and send traffic there and look at the comments and have that even inform your editing process. And also tell people you're writing a book about the same thing that you're writing these little chunks of information about. And the beauty of this is when you're building your own personal ecosystem of fans, then when you launch the book, there's all these people that you can, maybe do like for one day or half a day, make your digital copy free on Amazon.
Hmm.
So they'll all come take part and drive you to number one and also leave you positive reviews. And when you get a lot of positive reviews, then that's going to give you more power if you want to go and do paid Amazon ads. Because then when people get to the book, they're going to go, wow, 50 people gave you 5 stars. This is probably a good book. And you can start building that outer layer. So you've got the inner layer of people that already follow you. And then through the marketing, you want to grab that outer layer. And a lot of that will have to do with the power of the reviews once they actually get to the landing page to buy the book or not to buy it. And a lot of smart things you should be doing with your copy would be the same smart things that you're doing with writing your book in terms of really targeting who the audience is, because it's not everybody. Even if your book does become gangbusters and everybody does read it, you'll notice that those books are still written for one person as if you're inside their head. And then those auxiliary audiences are just drawn to it because it's so good. So it would be a mistake in the marketing then not to follow that same advice, so you still want to market it just to the reader that you're for and be very clear. I have an example of a client whose book is about divorcing wisely, and it's got prayers and meditation in there. So that's in the tagline, and that's intentional, because what a mistake if we just made a really more exciting title and made the copy really exciting. It's about divorce and da da da, and then they get in and it's about mindfulness and meditation, and they're like, but I'm angry and I want to be angry. That's not the reader for that book. So there's a lot of smart things you can do also by making it clear who your book is not for in your copy and in the promotional material, so you just drive the correct traffic there.
So you're not getting angry people leaving bad reviews.
Yes.
Got it. How do you get people to actually take the time to leave a positive review? Like, is there a way for you to do like a call to action somehow, like on follow up?
Absolutely. So when you're thinking about that initial audience being the people that already follow you, and you're trying to get them to buy your book on a certain day when you've made it free, then I would also be reminding them to leave you a review. And one thing you can do is screenshot your review and send it to me. And then you can repurpose that in your social media posts and your email. And you're also giving some attention to the person who did review, which makes other people want that positive attention. So they're going to want to screenshot, where they shared your book, or they're going to want to screenshot their review and send that to you. And then a lot of times I find that, people won't do it if you don't ask. So don't assume they're just going to do it because they like you. You've got to tell people to do it. And then I give my clients a few questions, because sometimes people won't leave reviews because, like, I have a PhD in English. I'll review books all day. But, like, if you're just an average person, who am I to say something about a book? So I include a few questions to give structure to the reviews. Like, here's some things to think about when you're leaving your review. And people can take them or leave them, but I'm sure that that's helped the reviews when I look at them for my clients, because not only did people write them, but you can also understand them. There's an organized flow because they're just organized to answer the questions.
Okay, this is so good. Okay, so day one, have it for free on Amazon. Tell people to actually like tell them what to do. Go leave a review. Tell them what to include in the review. And then after that, you said do ads on Amazon, driving traffic to the book.
Yes. And it's if you have like a huge Facebook group, then maybe Facebook ads would be a good idea. But in terms of ad spend and ROI, Amazon ads are much more affordable than Facebook ads.
Good to know.
And on Facebook, it's a social platform. So you're trying to get people off a social platform to go buy something in a marketplace platform. Whereas on Amazon, when you're advertising, it's like they're already in the grocery store and they were going to buy pickles, and you've just got your ad is like, buy my pickles. So, but they were already going to buy some pickles. They're shopping with a whole cart of food in there. So, I think it makes a lot more sense. But once you've kind of once you get to feel like you're kind of exhausting the Amazon ads and now you should have way more reviews, I would look at Facebook depending on what your funnel looks like. If you're offering a course or coaching services where it would make sense to have the kind of ad spend that you do on Facebook, then a book can be an excellent tripwire just as that low dollar way to start spending money with you and seeing how great it is when they get your paid content to keep wanting more of it.
So I'll break that down even further. Russell Brunson is brilliant at this. And I was actually, before I got on, I'm attending his 2 Comma Club live event. And so like
Fantastic.
he's brilliant. And so go get his book Traffic Secrets, and then you can actually enter his funnel where he has like you can buy the audiobook and then a different course. And so he's offering a free book, and I probably spent $200 on the free book because he's so good at what he does with the marketing and
Yeah,
everything. So, like, if you're
so
gonna
much.
go that route with spending Facebook ads, like, don't just offer the book, have that enter Russell's funnel, and then you'll see.
Absolutely. There should be a whole product suite.
For sure. Okay. So, all right, we've written the book, we've got the marketing. How do you create like that elevator pitch? So when someone asks you like what's your book about? How do you say that in a way that gets people interested and like actually makes them take notice?
Yes. So I actually put this together on the fly, kind of impromptu, when I attended the Agents and Editors Conference with the Writers League of Texas a couple years ago. And what happened is there was like a mixer party where they said the authors should practice the pitches that they would be making the next day to the agents they had appointments with. And so I attended, and I have a lot of experience networking for business, and I've helped some entrepreneurs with elevator pitches in that space. And what happened is when I started hearing these authors' pitches, they were horrible. And the reason they were horrible is really the same thing that happens to entrepreneurs when your business is like you do so many things and it's so big. And then how do you make that one or two sentences? And then these books, they're like 80,000 words long. And so they wanted to tell you like the whole and this and this and this. And so what I did is I would start asking them questions the same way I would the entrepreneurs I put pitches together for. So I would say, who's your target audience? Who is already walking into Barnes & Noble? They want to buy your book. They're looking on the shelf where it's going to be, but it's not there yet. Who is that reader? And then I would say, okay, why are they picking it up? What is the thing that they want as the outcome of reading your book? And this directly goes into some philosophy around sales, that people aren't just buying the thing you're selling them, they're buying the hope and expectation of how themselves and their life will be better
Mm-hmm.
afterward. And so you think what that is. And once you can define those pieces, then that's your book pitch. It's for this audience of readers to get them this outcome after having read your book. And what happens a lot of times is instead of that, what we hear is the why and the how
Mm-hmm.
and the technical stuff, and they just want to information you to death. But that's not why people buy.
This is So good, because I see this a lot of times with like people trying to sell an online course. This is so similar, and they're like, oh well, it has 52 different like checklists and like 20 videos, and nobody cares about that. They care about the transformation. So by reading this book, how is this going to transform my life?
Yes, absolutely. And then you also want to leave those breadcrumbs so that people just keep asking more. So you're just having it down to this sentence is perfect when you're posting on social media, like when you enter a Facebook group. Like when people join me to Facebook groups, instead of getting upset, I'm like, yay, this is a chance to pop my elevator pitch into a new group of people. And, when you take that approach, what you're doing is you inspire curiosity, because when you've got that end result there and people are like, oh, I am the target reader, I want that end result, I wonder how they do it. And then when you get asked how, then when you share the how, which might be the 52 things, although we'd still probably want to make that sound like less work. That sounds like it would take almost a year if I did one a week. But then you're just responding to the questions they ask. So then instead of doing the information dump that just makes eyes glaze over and they're like, maybe someday, if ever, you're engaging in a dynamic conversation and people are asking, and that's why you're telling. And it gives you a layer of mystery too. I get told a lot of times that I seem mysterious, and I think the ghostwriter thing is kind of exotic, but I think what really happens there is I just let you peel back the onion instead of just saying all the things, and so there's just always another layer to pull back.
Okay, this has been so good. Oh my gosh. What did I miss? Like what else do we need to know?
Ooh, yes. I think the importance of a title and tagline,
Mhm.
because a lot of times authors will also get hung up on what's the title, and this can happen in several ways. So sometimes when I first have a 15-minute conversation and they'll say, okay, well, I've already got the title. I'm like, okay, what is it? But the thing is, when you already have the title but you haven't written the book yet, I mean, the title may or may not stay what you have chosen now. Maybe it will, but oftentimes it won't, because a title is a promise for what is inside the manuscript. So if you don't know what's inside the manuscript yet, you may not know what the promise is.
Mhm.
So another thing is, so the title is going to attract attention because it's a promise that the reader wants to have fulfilled. And then your tagline is kind of like the explainer of the promise. So your title's gotten me interested. Now I've clicked, or I'm looking closer as I'm scanning on my phone. And then the tagline should be locking me in. And then everything thereafter in the copy is just pushing me to get into the content of the book, which I should have to pay for. And I think where that can go wrong is people can be too cute with the title.
Uh-huh.
And it can be, but my son always says that it's fun, or but there's this great joke I make on page 52, and that is not a great way to choose a title. I would really think of it as your title is a marketing tool, so I would treat it that way instead of treating it as something kind of precious.
Would you suggest hiring a copywriter to like help with the tagline and description?
Yes, I think that is an excellent idea, as well as the back jacket copy of the book, because that's also copy.
For sure. So good. Well, what's one of the best books that you've read?
Ooh, that I've read. Wow. Most recently, I read Todd Herman's Alter Ego,
Ooh.
and I love that book for all the reasons. It's so well written. Each chapter covers another phase of uncovering your alter ego. And he uses a lot of Marvel and all these common superheroes that we know, and he equates how you can look at their hero's journey of things like going into the phone booth and then emerging with your superhero cloak on, and how you can do that for yourself in your life and your business. He's like a sports performance coach, but I found that this also equates definitely to my business. In fact, before this interview, I was putting on my Dr. Cindy cloak of power, so I could come in powerfully. And it's also really well written in terms of the way he does like literally everything I would want to see on a well organized book. So he ends each chapter with a cliffhanger to make you want to open the next chapter, and it's very bingeable that way. So the information is just the perfect amount of research and a few statistics here and there with just enough fun stuff that you don't feel like you're learning even though you are learning. And it's also very inspiring.
I'm going to add that to my list. Awesome. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
Yes, for me, an impact is when a reader reads your book and then they do something after they have read it. So when someone takes action, it's not enough to just change the way they think or change their mind, even if it's like a mindset. Mindset is what the book's about, so that's kind of the deal. But a really successful mindset shift results in personal shifts that change your behavior. And I think when you're helping clients change their behavior and to take action they wouldn't have otherwise taken, that creates these ripple effects in the universe. Because if action happens whereas otherwise it wouldn't have, they're filling a void. There's just this, you can't stop it. So that's really important to me. And then in terms of books in particular, making your impact happens when your reader has done this work and taken the action, and then they tell other people. And that also creates your second legion, if you will, of new fans that were referrals into your book, which is actually how I found Alter Ego through Kevin Rogers.
Nice. Where can we connect with you?
Yes, my website, cindychildress.com, is the perfect place. And on Instagram and Facebook, you'll find me at Cindy Childress, PhD.
Amazing. Cindy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This has been just amazing. So I really appreciate you and your time. So thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.